I had the title, the income, the respect, the identity, everything I could have wanted, but I was dying inside. Getting into TV and film, I built the life I never thought I'd have. Like, it was fantastic. I had money. I was being super creative. I'm a graphic designer, right? So I get to make anything that I want, and suddenly I'm getting paid really well. Like, I grew up in a council estate, and so, getting paid these kind of numbers was crazy. Like, I just never expected it. And when I tell everyone that I worked in TV and film, every single time it was the same. It was always like, oh my gosh, like, how did you do that? What's it like? Do you get to meet the actors? Like, it's amazing and all that kind of stuff. And look, I can't knock it too much. Like, going into TV and film allowed me to buy my house. I got to work with my now wife, which was amazing. And I got to work on some really cool projects. I met some really cool people. And I really had this sense inside me that it was like, I've made it. Like, I've been struggling for so long, like really struggling for so long. And I finally got into TV and film, and it was like, wow, I've made it. I'm a lead graphic designer. I'm working on Warner Brothers movies and like Netflix and all this kind of stuff. And it was awesome, like really awesome. What happened in the end is just I ended up feeling numb. I think it got to a point where it was like, this is it. Like, this is what the industry is. I'm meant to feel amazing. And I tell my family, I told my friends, and everyone was like, oh, like, it's amazing. And I just really, deep down, I was quietly numb. I've got a habit of, and I'm sure other people do too, I cope. And I'm never outwardly emotional, expressive. Like, I could be a loud person, but I'm not like a panic person. I never really got outwardly freaking out and stuff like that. I was always calm. And I think that's why people kept hiring me, was because every job really is in, torrential waters and storms and thunder. And I was always just like, you can rely on me. Like, you could rely on me in my job. I was good at what I did. And I got rewarded for that. But I felt like the reward was giving over a piece of my soul. I could, go to Asia. I bought my house. I had all these things. And just deep down, I just had this sense of like, I shouldn't be here. And I just couldn't put my finger on it. It wasn't one big breakdown. It wasn't like there was a couple of individual moments that felt like I shouldn't be here, but it wasn't like a light bulb moment. It was quite quiet. Every job felt like I was leaving a piece of myself in the job, which was very difficult for me. Yeah, one of the biggest turning points, I worked on the biggest job I ever worked on, and I was getting paid more money than I'd ever been paid before. And I took a picture of myself, which I might upload on here. And I keep it in my favorites. And that job worked me to my death. I was in London, working on a job, a Warner Brothers movie. And I was working minimum 13, 16-hour days. Now, I understand, right? Woe is me. Like, there's doctors and nurses out there who are doing this all the time. And big respect to them. I'm just saying this from my perspective, how I felt, right, in this moment. And so I'm probably getting 5 hours sleep every night. I'm getting into work, and every single day in work, you try and work ahead, right? So I'm a lead graphic designer, or I was a lead graphic designer, should I say. My job is that I was in charge of all the graphics and designs and animations on the screens and props and making all those kind of things, billboards, neon, all that kind of stuff. Great. Creatively, you get to make a chocolate bar one day and a CIA hacking screen the next day, right? Great. I had a team at the peak of about 5, and I was managing this team, and every day we came into work and it was putting out a fire. There was a fire every single day, and still have to fight through that and be creative. The general feel when you look around the art department on that job was just everyone's just at their wits' end. I'm talking bags down here. One day I got home, I left something at home, or where I was staying at the time in West London, and I lay down on the bed and I looked at myself, and it was the lowest I'd ever felt. Like truly one of the lowest times. But I was earning more money than I'd ever earned. And coming from a council estate with no money, holes in my shoes, that it was like, I should be so grateful. And I was fighting with myself that like, I have such an amazing opportunity and I'm just sad. And I took a picture of myself lying on that bed, exhausted. I mean, truly 16-hour days every day, back to back, people shouting at me, people shouting at other people crying in the toilets. It was just sad. And it really is the nature of the TV and film industry. And anyway, on that day, I decided that I need to make a change. And I didn't know what that was. I had no idea. But never did I think I would finally make it to, Hollywood level movies. And I couldn't be more sad. And I decided, that was the day that was the point where I needed to change something. And I didn't know what that was. And that was really scary for me, to try and make some kind of difference, some kind of change. And that was the beginning of the end. That was 2023. We're obviously now in 25. So making a change, I had no plan. I had ideas. Everyone has ideas. But really, I think deep down, I felt ashamed. The industry really has this feeling, this sense, this underlying simmer that like, oh, you can't cope, leave. And everyone seems to one-up each other. And so it becomes like, when I first got into the industry, I worked 17 hours a day for free. And, oh, you're tired? I was here till 11 o'clock last night. And it always seems to be oh, you think you're struggling, I have to do this. It seems to be a competition of who's struggling the most and who can cope the most. That's not a healthy, creative environment. That's not a place I think anyone wants to be, where you're competing over who's struggling the most. And it's weird, right? You look around, there's a lot of divorced people, a lot of people who are, have been in the industry for 12, 15, 20 years, and they've only worked 6 months this year, right? There's a lot of people who drink a lot, drugs, partying, all that kind of stuff. And I think when I'm looking at my seniors in the industry, so I'm looking at the production designer who's the head of the art department, or I'm looking at the producers, right, the next level up, or I'm looking at the line producer, production. Everyone's exhausted, but they're all pretending like this is just how it is. This is how it works, right? We're all tired. We're all mentally drained. None of us see our family. None of us see our kids. You need to go to a funeral? No problem. Can you be back by 3 o'clock? Because we have to do this thing today. And I think getting caught in that environment does things to you. It changes you in a way that you don't necessarily feel comfortable with. I felt myself, I like to think of myself as quite a fun, bubbly person or whatever. And you find yourself changing. Hollywood sort of makes you into this person that, you don't take crap, great. You get stronger, great. But it makes you a bit of a robot, a bit of a cog in the machine. And you're very aware of that when you're there. Like you're just a tiny piece in this big machine that doesn't care about you. Its whole goal is to chart, get big numbers, and make loads of money. Ultimately, even though we're in this creative dream and we're all doing paintings and we're all going on set and we get to meet the actors, great. Ultimately, it's a money-making machine and you're just a cog, and they remind you that you're a cog whilst you're on the job, which is quite difficult to come to terms with. And so they pay you well. And they pay you well in a way that you can't leave. And I've had this discussion with multiple people in the industry where you're paid so well that your like for like job in the real world is, more than double, sometimes triple what it would be. So you can't really leave. And a lot of people get stuck. And I was so scared of getting stuck that leaving was my only option with no plan. So I decided to leave. It was 2024. I just finished a job and I was just at the end of my tether, and I decided to leave and make a change. And I just took an ambitious shot and shot for property investment. Now, was that the goal of my dreams? No. But I seen it as my only way out. I've always invested in all that kind of stuff, but I just felt I was truly losing myself. And there's this thing where they talk about addiction and how when you're addicted to something, oftentimes the only way you can quit is if the pain was harder for me to stay there than it was to leave. And I was finished. And it's really hard to leave. Like when I first left or started to begin leaving, suddenly I'm getting phone calls left, right, and center. This job starting, it pays this much, great. But I'd already decided. And I think the scary part was I didn't truly have a plan. I'd saved up money, obviously working in the industry. And I was just like, I need to get out and just take a gamble on myself. Because I'm scared of what might happen to me if I stay in this industry. And I understand a lot of people probably feel like that, but I was truly scared for my health. And even saying this to the camera, right, to you, I feel ridiculous. Like I feel almost ashamed and embarrassed. Like, oh, I couldn't handle it, so I had to leave. One of the biggest shocks that I had was I was so scared to tell people that I was leaving, right? It's like, wait, you're leaving TV and film? And I was so scared. I was so ashamed. I felt like people were just going to mock me. Like, oh, you can't handle it. You can't handle the heat, so you're getting out. What I found really interesting was a lot of people were like, oh, you're leaving. How? Like, what are you doing? Can I do it? And that was one of my biggest wake-up calls. That was one of the moments where I was like, okay, I've made the right decision. Because so many people pretend like when they're in their job, everything is fine. And it hurts, but not enough to leave. And when I finally started telling people I was leaving, which I was so scared to do, people were like, how? Like, what's your plan? Can I do it with you? And yeah, like I said, that was the moment where I was like, okay, I've made the right decision. Now, did I choose the right thing to leave with? Probably not. I mean, I learned a lot, but the pain of staying was way worse than the pain of leaving. And I don't want to come across like I've left and I'm smashing it. I'm not by any means. I've started a business, a growth agency, great, but I'm not making the money yet that I was making when I was in TV and film. And even now, I still feel like it was the better decision. Whilst I was in TV and film, I started getting sort of reactions, like sensitive skin. I started getting hives. So I would get like under my eyelids or under my eyebrows, I was getting like rashes on my neck. I would get like a rash, it would get itchy. And I started taking antihistamines to settle it, so it would go down so I could carry on working, right? I'm just flat out constantly working. Since I've left the industry, that's gone. Now, I've not been to a doctor. I've not had this proven, but I understand that hives can be a symptom of stress. And suddenly that's gone. And so my body was telling me whilst I was there that this is not for you. And now my body is almost back. I'm healthier than I've ever been. I actually have time to go to the gym. Whilst you're in TV and film, right, my commute, let's say, would be an hour. I get to work, I work 12 hours, and then my commute back is an hour, give or take, maybe an hour and a half if it's bad traffic, depending on what studio I'm at. And so at what point do you go to the gym? I go to the gym at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, fine. And then I get home, go straight to bed. And at what point do I see my wife? And doing something like that is fine. Like, working 12 hours, 16 hours a day is great. If you have a plan, right, you're working towards something. But in TV and film, I felt like I hit a dead end. I reached, I guess in another job, you would call it like upper managerial or whatever. I was a lead graphic designer, so I'm the highest I can get in graphic design. In TV and film, I'm managing teams, I'm booking all these things, great. But then the next thing is a production designer, and they have less time than I did. And it becomes a lifestyle and great. But I'm looking at the production designers I'd seen. Now, some of them are amazing people, like truly amazing, wonderful people. But I was on one job and one designer got a phone call. Their son had got into a fight and their son lived, 200 miles away, and they can't leave because we've got a big thing that we're shooting tomorrow. And so they couldn't be there for their child. And now I'm expecting a kid with my wife. And there's nothing I want more than a family. Nothing I want more than a family. A healthy, loving, warm family. And I just don't understand how when you're working 12 hours, 16 hours a day, how you spend time with your kids. How do you do that? I don't have the answer. My wife also works in the industry, and so we can't both be in the industry and have a kid. And what you find is that a lot of the people don't have kids, and they're in their 40s and they're regretting their decision to have not had a child. And that scares me, right? I've got a Range Rover, great. Oh yeah, I've got a nice house and I live in the countryside, but I have no dominion over my own life. I don't have a family I could raise. I don't have time for a family. How do you meet someone, right? Now I'm lucky, I'm married to a wonderful, wonderful human. But let's say I wasn't, or we broke up, I wouldn't even know where to find someone. And there's so many, workplace things in place. You can't flirt with people in work, obviously, for good reason, Harvey Weinstein. Where do you find love? And love is the most important thing. So, yeah, I needed to make the change. And I'm struggling, I'm struggling to grow. I have a path now. I see where I'm going. The agency is doing well, but it's hard. It's really hard. But so is doing something that you hate. Working in any industry, in any job that is draining the life out of you, but you choose to stay, that's hard. And so I decided to choose my hard and my difficult and have more control over my own life. And I took a big risk. I'm still taking that risk. Hopefully it pays off. And hopefully I don't end up back in the industry the way a lot of people I know have left and ended up back there. But I'm trying. I'm really trying. I've got doubts. Money's tight. But I'm still willing to take this risk. I need more control over my life. Starting from zero was less scary than being promoted in the industry that I was doing really well in. And the idea of being stuck there for a long time or forever, like some of the people, is terrifying. Peace is starting to show moments. I can go into my garden, I can go outside. I'm not trapped behind a desk or on set. I'm able to go to family events that I wasn't able to go to before. Or, my grandfather passed away whilst I was on a movie, and I just took the day off. And I felt so guilty for taking that day off. We were really busy at the time. But I really loved my granddad. And I didn't even deal with that emotional strain until after the job. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I still felt guilty for leaving for that one day. And it's just insane that anyone would want that for the rest of their life. Again, I'm not here to put flames onto people that are still there. I'm just talking about how I felt and how I feel. Leaving a job that you've been in for a long time, what you don't realize and what nobody prepares you for is you have this loss of identity. People knew who I was. They knew that I was a designer in TV and film. They knew that I worked on movies, and it became part of who I was, this identity that, oh, Drew, the graphic designer, works on Hollywood films. It became part of who I was. And leaving the industry, you really lose that sense of identity. Leaving any job that you've been in for a long time, it's like it becomes who you are. I'm not trying to say that I've fixed it and I feel 100% better, because I don't, but I'm getting a good sense of who I am outside of the industry. And it's sort of like laying a new wall. Where I'd built a castle before, I'm laying new stones. But nothing can really prepare you for that loss of identity, that sense of self. It's very important to have that. That's what gets you out of bed in the morning. And I did lose it for a brief sense of time. And I'm still fighting with that demon, if I'm honest. But it's getting a lot easier. And again, I'm not on here to tell you I've fixed it and I've left and everything's better. Things are better. I've found a sense of peace. I know what I'm working towards. Really, this video is more like there's hope. And if you're stuck in a difficult scenario, you can make the choice to change and work on something for yourself. Work on becoming a better person for you. Because being stuck at something you hate is no way to live. And in the end, you're only going to regret the choices you didn't make. Because there's fear. I'm still scared. I'm still nervous. It's human. But staying there is not going to fix your problems. I'm still just figuring it out. And the good thing is, at least I'm doing it as me. The person who I know what I want to try and achieve, and not the person or the version of myself that I built to survive and to get through. We're not made to survive. We're made to live, right? It sounds cringe, but it's true. I was in survival mode for too long, and I've decided to make a change. If this hits home, maybe it's your sign to stop surviving and start making a change. I believe in you. I barely believed in myself, but just enough. You've got this.